I'm happy to present the first speaker. We have Mattias Rost. He's a senior lecturer at University of Gothenburg within human-computer interaction. He's been programming since he was 6 years old. And you saw him earlier at SVT for a quick chat about how we are using ChatGPT at work. He's going to talk about why some developers adopt this new technology and others don't. A warm round of applause.
Now let's see if I can do all this, because I can't really stand still and talk. Well, I can, but then it becomes boring for me and for you. So I'm gonna flip on this. Is it on? Yeah. And then we'll see if this will work. Otherwise, I will grab this and start moving around. Okay. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Mattias. I'm a researcher at the university, which means I usually speak to people who are younger than you guys. And I'm not saying that you guys are old, or maybe I do. So let's wait for we'll get there soon. So I'm going to talk about ChatGPT, and I'm going to assume that you've all tried it. Has anyone not tried ChatGPT? One person, two persons. Okay, that's interesting. So afterwards, you can go into chat.openai.com and try it out, right? But I think you've seen it anyway. I think you've seen people using it. You've seen examples of it, I'm sure, right? But what I'm going to talk about is how it works, why some people use it, and why some people don't. Does that sound okay? Okay, cool. So first, what is ChatGPT? Well, as you might already know, it's a concatenation of two terms, right? One is chat and one is GPT. With me so far? Cool. Chat, we probably know what that is, right? We talk to it. So it's this kind of dialogue form. So chat, we kind of know about. GPT, however, might be more unknown for some of you. So let's go there, right? So what is GPT? It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And that might not say much to everyone, right? Unless you already know what GPT is and what a generative pre-trained transformer is, right? So what is it? Well, if I ask ChatGPT what it is, it will say it's an autoregressive language model. And that's what it is. So then what is an autoregressive language model, you might say? Louder? Is the microphone not working? Or am I not speaking close enough? I can hold this because I think I'm speaking too far away from it. So is this better? Yeah? Okay, cool. So, autoregressive. That's the easiest part of this. It just means it can generate stuff. So when we talk to ChatGPT, it's giving us a bunch of text, right? And that's the autoregressive part of this autoregressive language model. So then we come to language model. What is language model? Well, let's pick that apart as well, right? So what is a model? What do we mean by a model? We can mean many things with a model, right? Some people might know the atom model, Niels Bohr's idea about how an atom looks like and how it works. There's a nucleus and there's electrons surrounding it, right? That's a model, the standard model. But we will talk about a statistical model. That's what we talk about when we talk about a language model. And what is a statistical model, you might say? Well, here we have a model of a coin, right? And you can express it in this nice way, which says that the probability of a coin being heads is 0.5, which means it's half the time. And the probability of a coin being tails is 0.5, half of the time. Simple so far. It's going to get much harder, maybe. We'll see. So that's kind of basically a statistical model of a coin. We just know it's a process of the coin, right? So we can figure out and we can predict what the outcome might be. So we can do that for a dice, obviously. And we can ask this model, if you have a model for a dice, what's the probability it will become 6? And it's 1/6, right? Some more complicated models might look like this, and it's a conditional model, okay, a conditional probability model, which says that if you have 2 dice, and the first one rolled and it's 6, then what's the probability of the second dice being a 3? Does anyone know the answer to this? Yeah. Yes. So if you first roll 1 dice and then the second dice, sorry? Good, right? So this is a poker player, right? He knows that they're independent. Perfect. But what can we use this for, right? What's good of knowing like the outcome or the probability of the outcome of a dice or something like that? It might be to know that, okay, so how much should I wager to get to the end goal on a board game or something like that? But you can also use it as a generator. Because if we have a model, we also know the distribution or probability distribution of the different outcomes. What does that mean? Well, we can take all the outcomes, or possible outcomes, right, and put this on basically this sort of wheel, a wheel of fortune, right? And we can make the sections of the wheel sized just like the probabilities, right? And for a dice, it's equal probability, so it just is the same way, right? And then we can just turn this wheel of fortune, yeah, and wait for it to stop and say that, okay, so the outcome would have been this. And we can generate a bunch of outcomes from rolling a dice. So what does this have to do with language models? Well, that's what we get to now, right? So then what is a language model? That's what we're asking ourselves. Well, we can express a language model like this. And this is basically saying, what's the probability that I am Mattias is part of language? And what's the probability of he and Mrs. the? Well, what we know, if it's a good language model, is that the probability that I am Mattias is greater than the probability of something that's not part of language. Okay? So a language model is just a statistical model kind of knowing something about language. Okay? We can also use this conditional thing, right? So if we say that we have a sentence, for instance, that starts with I am, then what's the probability that Mattias comes after? Which might be good if you have like a word processor and you type a word and you know that the first words were okay, but you know, how good was that second word or something like that. But it's of course much more interesting when you use it like a generator or something where you can sample from it, right? So when I ask in this thing is like, I am is the start of the sentence, then the model knows the probability distribution of the other words, right? So we can make this little wheel of fortune and we can spin it and we get another word. So hopefully we'll get Mattias from it, but we could also get cheese, which would make much more fun sentence, I think. And so that's what GPT is, right? It's just a big wheel of fortune and you spin it, and every time you spin it, you get a new word, right? And you add that word to the prompt and you get a new word and you get a new word. But that's all it is, right? It's no more hocus pocus. There's nothing fancy. It's just a big probability distribution that's conditional on a prompt. Okay? So what about the chat GPT part? And that's very simple. It's just that they have kind of taken this kind of general GPT model which knows something about language, and then it just kind of fine-tuned it so that the responses basically become something that looks like kind of a dialogue system, right? So when we write something, hello, it will not respond with like a continuation of a letter, but it will actually respond with, oh, hi to you too, sir, or something like that, right? That's basically what the chat part is. So is that clear? That's what ChatGPT is. What GPT, it's just a big kind of wheel of fortune, right? That's how you should see it. So then, why do some people use it and why do some people not use it? And I'm going to explain that through two different things. One is about something about new technologies and something about anthropomorphism. Does anyone know who this is? I'll give him a little hint with a little text because he's known for this sort of phrase. This guy is called Marshall McLuhan, lived in the 60s. He was, active in the 60s. Canadian philosopher. And he talked about technology, he talked about media, he talked about how they change culture, right? And he had like a bunch of kind of pop references that came up, and the medium is the message is one of the famous ones because it was like, what does that mean? And then people liked thinking about that. And throw it around as they were smart or something like that, just like I'm doing now, right? But what he was trying to talk about was like, how does technology or how does new technologies change culture? So we had this idea that, so he had this example. So for instance, the printing press. What effect did the printing press have on the world? Like, that's a new technology. Before the printing press, people were kind of copying books by manually writing. Like there were sitting monks in monasteries writing these or copying like the Bible, because you had to be kind of careful with which books you wanted to copy because it was very laborious, right? So basically we had a few copies of the Bible around. But with the printing press, all of a sudden you could mass produce these texts, these books. And you could do new things, right? You could do, newsletters or something like that and distribute them. But it also resulted in people reading these books. More and more people got to read, and more people got to kind of consume information in book form, which is a much more linear form than it was before. So before then it was like an oral tradition. People spread information and news using stories, right? Storytelling was an important part. But now all of a sudden you could just read it. And that changed how people thought. The thinking process has changed, right? So it changed culture. It changed how we do things, and it changed how we do those things. Okay? We can take other examples. It often talked about the TV. So before we had the TV, what sort of technologies did we have for that sort of thing that the TV do? Well, we had kind of radio shows, and there were theater plays and things like that. Okay? And with the TV, and I'm talking about TV broadcasts, what they did basically was they put radio shows and theater plays on the TV. Because that's what we tend to do, right? For new technologies, we try to do the things we already do in the ways we do them, but just with that new technology. And it took like a couple of decades before the TV became something of its own right, that we started doing something differently on the TV, that the TV became its own technology that let us express things and change the cultures, right? And we can look at more kind of recent technology. We can look at Google. Like Google changed how we do things. It changes what we do and it changes how we do things. Before Google, we might go to the library, we might borrow a book from a friend, we might, spend a lot of time trying to find a book to read and stuff like that. With Google, we just find information. And we don't even need to remember information. We don't need to take notes. We could just Google it again, right? So why is this? And I like to explain this through this other little thing called bounded rationality. And what is that? Well, bounded rationality basically explains why we do things, right? Why do we make or take certain decisions? Okay? And it's basing it that people are rational. We basically, in any given moment, we basically take a decision based on some sort of logical thing, right? It makes sense that I'm doing something. For instance, if I'm deciding what I'm going to do tomorrow, I wouldn't start thinking, yeah, I'm going to go to Mars or something like that, right? Because it's inconceivable that I could do that. So it's not like something that I'm going to think about. But I might think about, oh yeah, maybe I should go to work tomorrow. It seems to be a thing I should do. Or I could go to the movies or something like that, because it's something it's readily available for me, right? But you could also think of, like, let's say I'm being presented with, someone here hands me a couple of boards, a couple of nails, and a hammer. From that, right, from those tools, from those resources, I might think, okay, I can make a shelf or a chair or something like that. If I'm given the same boards and some nails and a scissor, it's not immediately obvious like what I would do with that, right? There's like a bounded rationality. So what are the technologies and what are the tools that we have now? Or that we are kind of accustomed to, that we are appropriate? What is the culture of technologies that we have? What are the tools, right? So we have Google, we have Wikipedia, we have calculators on our computers and phones, right? We have VS Code for those who use that, right? But we write software in the way we tend to write software. And that's the base, like the decisions or the way we do things is based on this bounded rationality by which these tools are and how we are used to using them. So what happens then when something new comes around? So now we come to the new technology here, ChatGPT. Well, if we follow Marshall McLuhan, we would start using it to do the things we already do in the same ways, right? And we have Google, and we have Wikipedia, we have kind of the traditional systems with tables and stuff like that. So let's see how this technology does that. So, I mean, not everyone can read these prompts, but I'm going to read them for you and you're going to see what they do. So it makes sense to do this. You ask it stuff and get answers. So here's one prompt. It says, what does Angela Merkel and Gerhard Schroeder have in common? And you get an answer. And it talks about Angela Merkel. It talks about Gerhard Schroeder. They are both former leaders of Germany. Merkel served as the Chancellor of Germany from 2005 to 2021, while Schroeder was Chancellor from 1998 to 2005. Both are members of the center-right Christian Democratic Union political party. That's text, right? It's language. It seems right. It's not right. It's factually wrong. Schroeder was not part of the CDU, right? So unless you know that, you would just think that, yeah, okay, so they are both part of that. I mean, they were not. The other example on the right is, so what is the world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot? And then you get an answer, which is an answer. Yeah, it takes some time. Like, what is it, 10 hours and 54 minutes by some guy, right? The guy exists, he's a mountaineer. The time is probably not correct, right? And so you might think of this as like, okay, so as Google or a Google replacement, it's really, really bad, right? But if you think of this as a wheel of fortune, it's amazing, isn't it? Like every single word has just been a spin on this wheel, right? And it's generating this kind of plausible text. And I find that really, really amazing. It's shit as Google or Wikipedia, but it's a really good kind of word generator thingy, right? It gives us good text. And that's kind of the point here. Like I think we're having the wrong frame of reference sometimes when we use this. It's not wrong that we do that. We tend to do this for any new technology. We try to, use it to do the things we already do in the way we already do them. But ChatGPT is not Google. It's not Wikipedia. It's not, right? It's a wheel of fortune. That's it. So that's what I want to say about that. So now we get to the anthropomorphism part. So there were two stories. And I think OpenAI kind of done a little bit of a disservice to themselves, but to language models in general, really, to all these wheels of fortune thingies. And that is by putting chat in front of it. The original part was actually called InstructGPT, which I think was a much better name, but we're stuck with ChatGPT. And so since it's called ChatGPT, we kind of tend to think of it as something we can talk to. And because of media, and I guess the name OpenAI, we also think of it as an AI, like an artificial intelligence. And when we think about artificial intelligence, we think of something intelligent, something smart, something we can now talk to, right? But we tend to not talk to all the tools we have. That's sort of a kind of a new weird thing. We don't tend to talk to our table lamps, right? And I don't know, I've never really talked to kind of this wheel of fortune. I mean, in the casino, I do sometimes 46, 46, 46, and then it's 12, and I shout, right? But I wouldn't expect it to give me any sensible response, like in terms of language or text. What we do talk to is like people, right? And since we want to talk to this thing, and we otherwise normally talk to people, we will think of this as a person, right? And that's the anthropomorphism part. We kind of attribute human traits to this thing. But if we do that, it again becomes a little nonsensical, because we would think that this thing, this tool, is intelligent and has the same sort of intelligence that we do and can reason and understand the same part of the world that we do, right? So in this example, it says that, and programmers like this, right? So if a woman can make a baby in 9 months, how many months does it take 9 babies to make a baby? Explain each step. And so it explains this, right? Super good. And at the end, it gives the answer. Therefore, it takes 9 women 1 month to make 1 baby. Perfect, right? We should employ this guy, it knows stuff. And I mean, if you treat this as like an intelligent thing that has the same kind of experience we do, it's stupid and it's wrong and it's bad and ChatGPT sucks. But it's a wheel of fortune. It's amazing, isn't it? It's a really cool thing. And so here I just want to conclude with this really. So what is it? What is ChatGPT? Why do some people use it? Why do some people don't? So, with any new technology, we are going to try and use it to do the things we are already doing in the way we're already doing it. And it's going to take some time before this thing becomes its own thing, right? And some people are treating it as certain technologies, right? Like Google or Wikipedia or something that has knowledge in it. Other people start using it for other things, right? And if you treat this and if you try to kind of judge it based on how good a replacement to Google it is, it will fall short. It's pretty bad at that, right? But it's not meant to be good at it. It's something new, it's something different. So certain things that it is good at is, for instance, code. Like it's pretty good at kind of generating code. Is it correct code? Well, I don't know. But we can read code fairly quick, so we can judge ourselves. And technologies like Copilot. How many in here are using Copilot? Phrase it that way. Okay, some, right? But like, I don't know, 5% or something like that. Do you like it when you use it? Okay, some people and some don't, right? So from my perspective, like I said, we try to use these tools to do the things we already do in the same ways, and it takes a while for them to become a new thing. For me personally, I don't write code like I did a year ago or 2 years ago when I used Copilot. Writing code is something completely different now. And I think this is going to be the case for a lot of different things once we start applying these technologies. These tools will find its own way. Thank you.